Today on Off the Clock, we are going to be talking about HR questions and challenges that are specific to summer. Welcome to Off the Clock, the webcast of employment attorneys at Miller Johnson, where we discuss what is happening in the HR world and provide practical insight and advice.
So there are some recurring themes, issues, questions, whatever we want to call them.
Seasonal issues
come up during the summer. Yeah. They're not specific to summer, and for those who are listening in warm weather states, maybe this doesn't apply to you.
Yes.
But in the Midwest and in colder weather states, there's something that happens in the summer.
Yeah,
right, to all of us.
For sure, yeah. How do I know it's summer? Well, part of the reason I know it's summer is I get recurring phone calls on certain themes, right? Every summer. So we thought it would be fun to talk specifically about those today.
Yes. Let's get started. What is top on your mind?
So the first thing on my list, speaking of still sweating after my run this morning, is heat and safety issues in the workplace, right? Every summer I get at least a couple of questions about are there standards, are there rules about exactly how hot it can be? Now, important to bear in mind, that could mean inside a workplace, maybe a production facility, but of course outside as well.
Right? It can really get
outdoor
hot.
Workers are obviously exposed to significant heat as well.
Right.
So,
and there have been changes, right? We know that most states have experienced record heats over the last few years. Right now, states are experiencing them, and OSHA has responded, right?
Yeah,
because with some new rules that employers might not be up to speed.
Yeah, not quite rules yet, but so let's sort of take a step back. Remember, OSHA has that general duty clause, right? That says employers have to provide a workplace, whether it's indoor or outdoor, that's free from known hazards that could cause serious harm to employees. And certainly heat is something that is a known hazard that could cause harm. And OSHA, for a long, long time, has recognized that. In 2022, OSHA did launch what they call a national program on outdoor and indoor heat-related hazards. That program centered around auditing and investigating.
Okay, so increased compliance measures.
Et cetera.
Got it.
And interestingly, they've prioritized certain agricultural industries, and in particular those that employ temporary non-immigrant H-2A workers, right?
Migrant farm workers, for instance.
Exactly. But other construction industries, manufacturing industries are included in that as well. And what OSHA has said to date essentially is that employers for which heat can be a concern should have some safety and health plan that speaks to heat. They would be looking for employers to be providing water, breaks, training leaders to recognize heat-related illnesses, things like that, right? So if our listeners are thinking to themselves, well, this is a concern for me, what should I do? I have people working outside, whether it's a lifeguard, right? Whether it's a camp counselor, whether it's agriculture, etc. Those are the types of things to be considered. Now, you mentioned a really recent development, and that's right. In April, OSHA presented a potential regulatory framework to a meeting at the Advisory Committee on Construction and Safety Health. Boy, I wish I were a fly on the wall at that meeting. Doesn't that sound like a blast? But anyway, they presented the idea to that committee of adopting regulations specific to heat, and the committee unanimously supported moving forward with regs. So we should see in the upcoming months draft regs coming out from OSHA specific to heat.
I mean, I'm not a big fan of new regulations from the federal government usually, but I think a lot of employers will at least appreciate the guidance.
Yes, that's exactly.
Because that general clause
What should we do?
can be confusing.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And a lot of clients I find are able to pivot and accommodate. They just need to know what the rule is.
Right.
Right? The worst thing is say, we don't know.
That's right.
Right? We don't know how OSHA will apply this or my OSHA will interpret this.
Right.
Right? But you have to keep people safe, and that's all we're going to tell you. Right? That can be very confusing to safety.
Sure. And and a lot of the time, heat is not something that an employer can control, right? Can change,
Right.
particularly for outdoor
Right.
work, right? So we can't control it. We can't help that it's hot outside or that we need to have employees doing these things outside. So what are we to do? I think it will be nice for those businesses to have guidance on then what's expected.
Keep in mind, it's not just for the traditional industries. People with kitchens, think about your kitchen staff.
Yep.
Right? I have a
Absolutely.
son working in a kitchen this summer, and it is extraordinarily
It's hot.
and air conditioning off, and any place where there's not air conditioning. Think about any interior. It's some warehouses, right? Other places
Right.
like that can get excessively hot.
And just a note, we talked a lot about OSHA, but there are at least 5 states now that do have specific heat safety standards in place.
Okay.
Those are Minnesota, Colorado, Washington, Oregon, and California. So if any of our listeners have employees or workplaces in those states, there are specific requirements and standards in place there.
California does get hot. The others I don't think of
I know,
as
isn't that interesting?
excessively
Colorado
hot
can
places,
get hot, but sure. Well,
Okay.
hey, it's hot. We're complaining about the heat in Michigan.
Well,
so
that's
I suppose
true.
It's an issue. Anyway.
Okay. Pot calling kettle black. Yes. Yep. Caught me.
All right. So next
All right,
summer
what's next?
issue, dress code.
The dress code question is always one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Mostly because of the specific examples clients
Yes. Right. Yes.
with it.
Yes.
I don't mind talking about dress codes in general, and we'll do that today. But by the time someone calls us, it's usually something, let's just say, that I've never heard before. Every time it's a unique question with a unique situation.
Right.
So keep those calls coming.
Right.
They keep us on our toes. But Sarah, you and I both know that during the summer, sometimes people like to get a little more casual.
Sure.
Right?
T-shirts. Some
Yeah.
might wear
Footwear might
less
change.
appropriate open-toed shoes.
Open toe, open heel.
Right.
Not much there.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, I am guilty.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's fun to get out
So-
the wardrobe, the summer wardrobe.
Yeah.
But people get excited when the weather gets warm and they can start pulling out their adorable summer dresses
I
and
know,
summer
right?
wear
Like
and
this is
bright
not the
colors.
sort of thing I would normally wear,
Yes.
but it's fun.
But consequently, the dress expectations do get pushed in a different direction sometimes.
And some people are more comfortable with that than others, right? Some
Right.
people aren't particularly sensitive to that, but some leaders really are.
Yes.
So what is your advice to clients who see some either pushing the boundaries or just straight up violations of dress code rules during the summer?
Right. So, first thing, we can certainly have dress expectations centered around appropriate shoes, appropriate clothing. In the summer,
Or
most of the concerns are often about how much skin is showing, right?
It's skin and shoes.
and
Those are
shoes.
the two. Yeah.
And so, in terms of a dress code policy, I kind of like the idea of even having a few sentences or a section about summer, right? Addressing the issue specific to summer, and maybe the rules are the same, or maybe they're different, and maybe the statement is just this does apply in the summer as well, right? But also being mindful that whatever the expectations are, we're applying them consistently to everyone, and particularly all genders.
Yes, that's where I see differences.
Yes, me too.
The
The gut reaction can be different if a woman is wearing a sleeveless shirt versus a man dressed in a similar way. So just be mindful of that.
I've seen like more casual Fridays type of situations in
Yeah.
the summers too. Maybe you let people, for those where it's important to the organization
Yeah,
to maintain
right.
a certain standard even in the summer, maybe Fridays, right? Do something to allow people to blow off some steam.
Right.
There can also, I've gotten this question before, can we have differences in dress code expectations, not based on protected characteristics, but based on whether you are client facing or customer facing
right.
versus internally facing only. And I
Sure.
think that's
Oh, of
absolutely
course,
fine.
that's
You might
great.
have an employee relations problem,
Yeah.
right? And people jealous of each other, but as long as that's not going to be the issue for you, there's no problem, right? Having
Absolutely.
different standards for different
Absolutely.
people in the office, so long as those differences are not based on protected characteristics.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep. You
Okay,
got it.
so yes, I'm violating Miller Johnson's dress code. I'm on record. Hopefully, I'll
I don't
still
know.
be
Do
here
we
the next
have
time
a dress
we
code?
record.
We probably do have a dress code.
Yes.
Yes, we do.
And
Maybe
if you
you're
haven't
not.
read it in a while,
Maybe you're not client facing today. So
I
it's
am
just
not
fine.
client facing today, actually, and
All
I
right.
am comfortable.
All right. Next thing on my list is a big one.
This is
I
a
do
huge
get this
one.
question usually early in the summer or even late spring.
Yep.
Summer interns.
Yep. Oh my gosh. Yes.
Are unpaid internships really a thing as a matter of law? I know they're a thing.
That is almost the way clients.
I know they're a
ask
thing, and
the
you and I both
question.
have kids right in that age,
Yep,
right?
we
Of
sure do.
Both them and their friends getting these quote unpaid internships,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
right? Can a private employer, let's take the easy
Yeah.
question, a private
Right.
for-profit organization,
Mm-hmm.
can they have unpaid interns in the summer?
Well, going to break that down two ways. First is we're talking about summer, and that's when most interns are available. But there is
Yes.
no difference between summer and the rest of the year,
Yes.
just in case
I do
people
think that's an important
people
first
attach
point.
to that part of your
Yes.
question.
Yes.
The second part is an answer that everyone hates lawyers for giving.
I know.
So hate me if you must. But it depends, right?
Right.
It is possible, but it is unusual, I would say. It is
Yep.
the exception rather than the rule.
Yep.
So there's because it's Fair Labor Standards Act stuff, which I love. So thank you for making sure this was part of the episode. Everything under the Fair Labor Standards Act, there's always factors. And you always have to balance them, or it's all or nothing. This is one of those all or nothing ones, and we're not going to go through them all because I just want to get to the main point, which is who is the primary beneficiary
Yes.
of that internship.
That's right.
And the way I think about it is if you have a job to be done, but very little money in your budget, right?
That's right.
You don't have the budget for a new hire. You have something, you need a website revamp. You need that's like a classic one I hear people wanting, college internship. You just need something, you have something that needs to get done.
Right.
You do not have the budget for a hire. So the light bulb goes off. So,
I'll
a
get
college intern.
I'll get one of those
I'll get an unpaid
college
intern.
unpaid intern.
It's probably not okay.
right.
Right? That should be a warning sign because you are benefiting from them. They are doing work that benefits the company. They are doing work that someone could theoretically be paid to
That
do.
an employee could do.
Right? If you had the budget for it, right? So that's a warning sign. If the intern is the primary beneficiary, then it can be unpaid. And you might wonder, why would I even have an intern if I'm not benefiting from it? If the intern always is. A shortcut there is if the intern is getting credit, usually college, although there's some high school programs.
Right.
If they are, and they actually pay for that, they are
Yes.
paying to work for
Right.
you, then oftentimes there is a good argument that can be an unpaid internship.
Right.
We still have to go through the analysis with you, but that those are just some cheats.
Right.
Right. Hacks, as the kids would say.
Right.
As the interns would
That's
say.
right. It's really
those are
the-
some hacks is
Right.
the way to think about
Right.
it.
Right. So if
Yeah.
if the primary benefit is to them getting training, we're investing
Mm-hmm.
our time and resources into providing them valuable training, and we're really getting nothing out
Right.
of it. Right. They're going to shadow the entire summer,
Yeah.
right, and not actually perform any work that's valuable to us, then that might be unpaid. I will say most of the internships of which I'm aware that's not how it works, right? It
They're
is
actually
not,
providing
it is,
goods
the
and
person is
services.
actually performing work.
Yeah,
So,
sometimes
okay.
yes, sometimes so. So usually I start with it's the exception.
Yes,
When
for
it can
sure.
be unpaid. And that's how I'd like all of our listeners to think about it too.
And why are you doing it? Right.
Yes.
That's usually the next question I ask. What's
Why are
the
you
purpose
doing
of the
it?
internship?
Why is the intern doing it?
Yeah.
I will say this, because I've had this conversation with many clients over the years. If the only benefit to the employer is we want to get to know the person to see if we might be interested in hiring them later, that's probably not enough of a benefit just to flip it to paid, if that's the
Yeah.
only benefit, right? But if they're actually doing any sort of work, producing things for you, writing newsletters, doing anything with technology, which just tends to be what we use a lot of interns for, right? Probably paid. Okay.
So, in other words, the internship has to be very boring for the person doing it. They can't actually do anything.
They can't do
They
anything
can watch.
of value.
They can't do anything of value. It sounds terrible.
And they're paying for that privilege.
Yes.
And then they write a paper about it at the end of the semester, usually, right?
That's right.
Yes, that's how it goes.
And then for summer interns, just a note, I often get the question too of, do they have access to our benefits?
Oh.
Whether it be benefits we provide by policy, like paid time off, holiday pay, et cetera, or whether it be health benefits, et cetera. And the answer is always, well, what does your policy or plan say?
That's another answer people hate lawyers for.
I know, right, exactly.
Well,
So
what does the contract say? What does the policy say?
Right. So just a note to businesses that have summer employees, whether you call them interns or not, or seasonal employees who are coming to work for short defined periods of time. And we know, at least at this point, are not going to be hired beyond that time because they're going back to school or doing something else. You probably want to have a specific classification for them. Seasonal is a popular title. And make clear that those benefits don't apply to them. So your PTO policy should only be available to employees that don't fall into that category. Your health benefits should carve them out, et cetera. So
Perfect. That's great advice because I see that missing from a lot of policies, actually, and handbooks and whatnot.
right.
Right. Good.
So my next two really kind of go hand in hand, and that is an onslaught of desire to take time off work and requests, right?
Yes.
For time off during, in some areas, like here in Michigan, a pretty short period of time. Everybody wants at least a week off, sometimes 2 weeks in the summer.
Guilty again. I'm one of those people.
So requests for time off work, and then also flexible. Some businesses have the ability to have more flexible schedules, remote work schedules, et cetera. So let's talk about that first one, and that's that increased pressure for people to take time off work, and how do you manage that in a way that both allows the business to continue and run, right? And
a small detail in
doesn't
running a
tank
business.
employee morale, right?
Right.
Because it's really difficult to tell somebody that they can't take time off in the summer.
Well, that raises a few points. I've gotten the question in the past, that question, can we just say no? If they have the days in the PTO bank, can we say no? You can't take them, or is that a violation of something? So my answer is yes, you can put the business's needs ahead of the employee's vacation desires. An employee relations issue for sure, but not a legal issue, and hopefully that's in your PTO policy somewhere too, right?
Some sort
the
of
needs
process
of the business
for how it,
right?
Well, and
First
along
come,
with
first
that,
serve, maybe something like that. Another solution, or it's actually not the same problem, but a tool, a strategy to use, because we know people want more time off in the summer, again, particularly in climates where summer doesn't last forever. So why not, if it's like if you can't beat them, join them, why not figure out a way that your business can still operate successfully and profitably, but give people that escape valve that they want anyway, right? And a lot of people might be less productive, right, during the summer and Friday afternoons. So we both know employers that have summer flex right, that allow employees on an individual basis
Right.
to flex their hours during summer, maybe more so than they would other times of the year,
Yeah.
with management's permission, right? Because we still have to meet the needs of the business. We know employers who have summer Fridays or summer hours, right?
Right.
Where most people either get a full day or a half day off on Friday. I know an organization that production facility manufacturing that switches to 4/10s in the summer instead of 5/8s.
Right.
Right, because the employees really appreciate having Friday,
Yes.
having long weekends,
Yep.
and they decided that that is something that they can still get the products out to their clients and meet customer
Yeah,
demand and
right.
all of those things. So I think it's going to be very different, employer by employer,
of course.
and maybe job role by job role.
Yeah.
But I think that is something people might want to think about, right, to get ahead of it. Right,
Sure.
and as an employee relations matter, and I think it actually increases productivity too. Instead of
I
people
agree with that.
stewing at their desk about having to be
Sure.
there.
And I will add, I know people who have stayed at jobs only because of that.
Retention.
Yes.
So a good retention tool.
Truly.
Interesting.
Truly. That is a significant factor in staying at a job because they love the summer, whatever it is, the summer hours, the summer flexibility. And employers are getting really creative about this too. So the summer shutdown has always been a thing here in Michigan in the automotive industry. The big three
Yeah.
have their collective bargaining agreements that shut down for the last 2 weeks of the year, always over the holidays, first 2 weeks of July. But I'm seeing that as increasingly for different employers who again have the ability to say, we're just going to be closed the week of the 4th of July altogether, and everybody gets it off. If you want to get paid, you have to use your PTO, but otherwise it can be unpaid. People really like that. Increased opportunities to work remotely.
Oh, that's
as well
a great idea.
in the summer.
That's a great idea.
In the event that people want to have the ability to travel and if they can work remotely. And again, the questions we get are often centered around, if I do this in the summer, right?
Yeah.
Am I creating a precedent that I should be worried about for the rest of the year? And I say, I actually think you can turn that on its head and say, no, we're not creating a precedent. This is a benefit to be excited about when summer comes, right?
Yeah.
And set the dates clearly, like Memorial Day to Labor Day is when these different rules and standards are going to apply. And then I don't really have any concerns about setting a precedent.
I don't either.
Employers should worry about.
Something else from summer and expanding the ability to work remotely, something we did not discuss yet that's special about summer is the kids are off of school.
Yeah.
Right? So people that have children, have school-age children, that rely on schools essentially for childcare, right? So that they can go to work. Working remotely more during the summer might be a huge benefit to those folks.
Sure.
Yeah.
Something to think about.
Great
too.
ideas.
Okay, just a few more here. The next one is quick. Holiday pay. You and I get asked this question, and we can dispense with it pretty quickly, I think.
We can.
Do employers have to provide any particular holidays off with or without pay to employees?
Can I just say it depends, just to make everyone angry?
Yes.
Well, it depends. To me, as a Fair Labor Standards Act girl and lover of all things Fair Labor Standards Act, I would say it depends on exempt versus non-exempt. So the short answer to your question, though, is no.
Right. We don't
No.
under federal law. Of course,
Yes.
there's a few states, by the way, that do
Yep.
have rules.
Look at your
I think
states.
it's Massachusetts and Rhode Island actually have laws about holidays and employees having to work, and there's rules about whether it's paid or not, et cetera. But under the Fair Labor Standards Act, generally speaking, no requirement to provide holidays paid or unpaid.
Right. And I get this question every year, a lot in the summer around July 4th. If someone does work on a federal holiday, do they have to get overtime or some sort of premium pay rate? The answer is no.
Not under the law.
Not under the law. You may want to do it as an employee relations matter, but it's not required. And then I said it depends on whether you're exempt or not exempt, because I get this question quite a bit too. For exempt employees, remember during a holiday week, assuming you have a day off, they get paid, and maybe you have, this is where I get the question, it's an unpaid holiday maybe?
Yes.
Do you have to pay the exempt employee for the full week if they work the rest of the days except for the unpaid holiday? And the
Okay.
answer is yes.
Yes, you do.
They get their full week pay. The non-exempt
Can you
people do
make
not have to
them
get paid.
use, if the holiday is otherwise unpaid, can you make
Mm-hmm.
them use their available paid time off then?
Yes.
Okay.
Now we're getting into the weeds, and I'm getting excited. Let's
to
have a
ask.
Fair Labor Standards Act show
I know,
coming
right.
up, because the Fair
Exactly.
Labor Standards Act is concerned about the paycheck at the end of the day, not if the pay is coming out of PTO versus regular wages. Good question.
Okay.
I love it. Okay.
Last one.
Yeah.
Use of FMLA and let's call it time off that would otherwise not be approved necessarily, right? And use of FMLA to provide an opportunity to not be at work during the
Yes.
summer months. And I see this come up in two ways. The first is for some sort of scheduled procedure or
Yep.
event.
Yep.
Employees conveniently decide to have the knee scoped or whatever it is,
Whatever.
something that the employee needs to have done. There is a legitimate need for it, but it's not emergent. And they decide, you know what, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that June
over the summer.
1st. And it'll be great because then I'll have 6 weeks off. And I realize I'm hypocritical if I have any sort of judgment whatsoever because I have 3 children and they were born intentionally in June, 2 in June and 1 at the end of May, right? So that is not lost on me.
We were we were talking off camera, and this may be edited out, about how you like to control things.
Yes, exactly.
So that anecdote
Who wouldn't have a baby in June?
is
what I-
perfect.
Yes, exactly.
The fact that you wanted to control it and that you were able to too, which is not necessarily up to you, right? A lot of people like that's you wanted to control it and your body cooperated.
That's exactly right.
That was that's
Anywho.
fantastic.
Anywho, so those requests for legitimate FMLA needs, do we have to allow that employee to take that time off work? And the answer is probably yes. There is an opportunity to have a conversation and push back a bit. They do have to provide at least 30 days notice for foreseeable use of FMLA leave. We can ask whether it's truly necessary that the procedure be done at the time it's scheduled to be done. They are likely to get their healthcare provider to say that, yes, it is, in which case, quite frankly, there's not a whole lot we can do about it.
This might not be the hill you want to die on.
That's right.
Is what you're saying.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then the second side of that is unplanned use of FMLA leave, use of intermittent leave.
Can I talk about the example here?
Increase in the summer. I forgot what your example is. What
My
is it?
example is this happens so much in the summer. An employee is off on intermittent leave that some other colleagues are jealous of and think that might not be legitimate. And then there are pictures on social media of the employee at Cedar Point, at the beach, at whatever it is,
Yep, you got
right?
it.
And then the coworker takes a screenshot, brings it into HR, and says, "FMLA fraud.
Right, exactly.
They must be fired."
Exactly.
Right? We see that quite a bit in the summer.
Yeah, we see that all year long, but there definitely is an uptick in the summer and phone calls I get about that. And what I'll say is that is a concern about dishonesty, and certainly warrants an investigation if the employer desires to look into it. There should be a full investigation to the extent we can. That employees should be given an opportunity to explain, etc. Ultimately, if there's a legitimate basis to conclude that person has lied about why they were off work or their use of FMLA leave, that can certainly be grounds for discipline. What I would say is you don't want to make assumptions or have a knee-jerk reaction. Right?
That's the error.
You want to be able to establish the legitimate basis for why you've concluded that that person must have lied.
That is the common mistake I see is HR professionals or managers, even more so managers, jumping to the conclusion that must be a misuse of FMLA, when in fact some FMLA conditions can coexist and be consistent with going
That's
to
right.
the beach.
It's possible that somebody can't perform their job that day, but can go to the beach,
Right.
depending on the job, right?
Right. I
So-
feel like that might be me today.
All
I could
right.
easily go to the beach today, Sarah. I'm not sure if I'm going to be very productive at work.
All right. Well, with that, let's get you
that.
out of here. Key takeaways on the summer episode. I think number one, understanding unique employee morale issues in the summer. What matters to your workforce is really important, and I think you can leverage that in a very positive way. And don't be afraid to have different policies and rules that are specific to summertime.
Love it. Great advice.
Awesome.
Okay. Have a great summer.
Have fun at the beach.